You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Some human rights advocates brave the threat of the pandemic. They took to the streets Thursday to condemn the anti-terrorism bill. The measure has earned criticism after hurdling the House of Representatives on Wednesday. One of the main authors and sponsors of the controversial bill has even withdrawn his authorship and voted against its passage. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Muntinlupa Representative Congressman Ruffy Biazon. Congressman Biazon, welcome to the show, sir.
Yes, good morning, Pinky, and to all the viewers out there, good morning.
Okay, so you authored the bill. You were one of the authors of the bill, but you withdrew, you voted against it. And from my understanding, it's because the version that was adopted was the Senate version. Of course, there was a version at the House, but because this was certified as urgent, the Senate version was adopted. What was wrong with this Senate version?
Well, personally, I had some refinements that could be done on the bill that was presented to us. As an author, of course, I would want to see the final version that is acceptable to me as an author. And as you mentioned, it was the Senate version that was brought to us. All the hearings, in effect, all the hearings on the bills that we filed have been set aside, and then we substituted it with the Senate version. Now, as an author, I myself had I had an idea on how to refine it based on the debates and the discussions that are going on. To understand the process, people might think, why didn't I just immediately register my opposition to it? The process is we present the bill on the floor, there are debates, there's a period of amendments, and then we vote on it on second reading. When it came to my turn to defend the bill, when the interpellator asked me if I was open to amendments, I even said I was open to amendments. But subsequently, no amendments were entertained, and then we went on to the second reading vote. So what was voted on in toto was the Senate version that was adopted by the committee. So it was then that I did some contemplation, and in the third and final vote, that's when I finally decided to vote no, because as an author, I deemed it my prerogative if I would be satisfied with the version that would be approved by the House. And
Absolutely.
as I said, it was a Senate version, and we did not have. As an author, we did not have inputs on the final version that was approved. So individually, I took that prerogative.
So what kind of amendments did you want to inject to be able to refine the bill?
Well, specifically, Pinky, I had an idea of amending the section on designation of terrorists. Although as it is, to most of the supporters and to the proponents, it was the intent was clear. But the way it was worded, it could be interpreted in other ways. So it became a point of debate between oppositors and myself off the plenary in other forums. So I saw the necessity of refining that provision to make it clearer. Because as written, it says that the ATC can designate a terrorist upon finding of a probable cause. That was the wording. But it was a bone of contention because people were saying that it practically gives the ATC the power to make a determination of probable cause, which under our judicial process,
Probable cause.
it's the prosecutor or the courts that should do that. Well, to us, the interpretation was that the bill respects and acknowledges that judicial process. But then it becomes a point that could be interpreted in other ways. So I had that idea that in order to make it clear and non-controversial, let's insert the phrase that the judicial determination or the determination of probable cause would be by the prosecutor, or the court. So unfortunately, that's just one amendment. But if it is allowed, then the bill automatically will go into a BICAM after we approve it. And I think that was the thing
Right.
that was
But
avoided. Yeah.
Congressman Ruffy, I want to talk about that, this ATC, or this Anti-Terrorism Council, but jumping right into what you said. So first, who determines probable cause? Is it clear in the anti-terrorism bill that it's the courts, or is it the ATC?
Well, the intention really is the courts, the regular process. The authors and the proponents acknowledge the existing judicial process, where it's settled that the probable cause is done by determination of probable cause is done by the prosecutor or the court. That's all. That's the understanding among us, the people behind the bill. But as it is worded, my realization of with discussion with other people, I'm not a lawyer, but when I discuss with other persons, including lawyers, I kind of realized that yes, it can be misinterpreted. Although it would be better if there's a specific wording that would preclude any doubt. So that was the thought in my mind
Right.
with regard to refining the measure.
Yeah, because there have been so many instances, Congressman, you've guessed it, numerous times, when we talk about certain provisions in the 1987 Constitution, one lawyer can interpret it as one thing and another lawyer can interpret it in another way. So much so that the best really is to be very clear on this. So you're saying that the message is that probable cause will still lie on the courts. But you
Yes.
said that there's a possibility that this could be interpreted in another way.
Yes, as an author, as I'm open to listen to inputs of oppositors, I realize that they may have a point, although our intention is not what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But as a lawmaker, I think it's important for me to make sure that there's no other interpretation. My no
Right.
vote isn't
Yeah,
a
because
backtracking. Yeah, my no vote isn't a backtracking for my position as an anti-terrorism advocate. I still continue to have that advocacy. It's an advocacy that I've had since then. But as a lawmaker, I'm always open to listen to other sides because I would want to craft a bill that, if not entirely eliminate any opposition, at least we are able to trim it down to as little as possible, to have a version
right.
that is clearer.
Okay. I want to talk about the ATC though. So this is the Anti-Terrorism Council, which is part of the Anti-Terrorism Bill. Sir, please correct me if I'm wrong. From what I read, this will consist of cabinet members. And the second question is, can they be the ones to authorize the arrest or the surveillance of an individual?
Yes, the Anti-Terrorism Council is composed of cabinet secretaries involved in national security and finance. Because please keep in mind that part of anti-terrorism is cutting off terrorist financing, and that is another component of the anti-terrorism bill. So the composition is really of cabinet members who are tasked or who have the responsibility covering the issues that are being that are the subject of the anti-terrorism bill. So I think the composition is but logical that they're the ones there. They are imbibed with certain powers, like on the provision that I mentioned. They're the ATC would be the one to designate a terrorist. Uh, but that is just to trigger the Anti-Money Laundering Council to perform its job in going after terrorist financing. The process would have been, if there is somebody who is accused of terrorism, and charges would be filed in court. After the determination of probable cause, the ATC would designate that person or organization as a terrorist. And then the Anti-Money Laundering Council can now take action, take over, and proceed with going
Right.
after the assets. It's similar to, for example, a graft and corruption case where an official, once he is charged,
AMLAC.
after determination of probable cause, there is an
Yeah.
order to freeze his assets. It's just the same, except that designation is somewhat of a
Yeah.
technical term for anti-terrorism.
But what's to stop? We're running out of time though. Ano po, what's to stop the Anti-Terrorism Council, composed of cabinet secretaries involved in defense and finance, to designate an individual, not for funding purposes, but because he's an enemy of the government?
Well, with regard to designation, again, it's supposed to be after the determination of probable cause. That's the only time that they can designate a person or an organization. Designation is different from proscription. Proscription is when you are given the status or you are elevated to a status of a terrorist, and that would be a brand or a label upon you, but that also follows a specific process going through the courts.
Okay. Congressman, just a last question to those critics who are saying this will stifle a lot of human privileges, or the privileges we have, freedom of press, freedom to assemble, and fears that this could be used against critics of the government, activists also. What do you say to that? Is this valid?
There have been a lot of misconceptions. In fact, like for example, there's this one infographic that I saw. It says there that expressing criticism online will make you liable under the terrorism bill. Attending rallies will make you liable. Organizing relief operations, etc., etc. You know, that's a misconception. First, really, is we have to look at the definition of what terrorism is in Section 4. It's composed of the acts that are listed that are combined with the purpose or intention for doing those acts before you can even be considered to be charged with terrorism. And the provision further down explicitly says or lists down activities in the exercise of civil and political rights that are excluded from the coverage of terrorism. So merely attending a rally will not make you a suspect of terrorism. Expressing your ideas online, even if it's criticism of government, as an author, I would say that is not included in the coverage of the bill. So there have been misconceptions, and I think an education of people to understand all the issues is important.
In fact, it says somewhere after Section 4E, I just want to read this part before we go. A congressman provided that terrorism as defined in this section shall not include advocacy, protest, dissent, stoppage of work, industrial or mass action, and other similar exercises of civil and political rights which are not intended to cause death or serious physical harm to a person, to endanger a person's life, or to create a serious risk to public safety. I wish we had more time because that second part is the part I wanted to ask you. So does that include advocacy, protest, dissent, but which are not intended to cause death or serious physical harm? That may be a question mark for me, but maybe you can answer it very, very quickly, Congressman Ruffy.
Well, those actions, if really intended for the purpose of causing death or physical harm, that would definitely become a violation of the law, whether it's the anti-terrorism bill or revised penal code. So it's just a reiteration of that provision of law.
Right. All right, Congressman Ruffy Biazon, sir, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras.
Thank you very much, Pinky.
Thank you. And it's World Environment Day. How can people help in saving the planet amid the global pandemic? United Nations Environment Program Goodwill Ambassador Antoinette Toss joins us after the break.